What's good, Regis recipients? How are y'all doing today? Let me know in the comment section. I want to thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Regis Reflections. Y'all already know each and every episode we have a different athlete on the podcast. And this week we got my dog Calvin. But say what's up to the people, Calvin.
What's going on, y'all? I'm glad to be here. Glad to, just chop it up. Chop it
Exactly.
up.
Handle business. Simple as that. So, Calvin, before we get into the episode, how's your mental health on a scale of 1 to 10 right now? 10 being the greatest and 1 being the worst.
I say right now it's about a 7.
7?
A calm 7. I'm glad to be going back to school, real soon.
Okay.
You know, a little sad I'm leaving my folks, but I got stuff to look forward to. Every day I wake up, it's a great day. So,
Hey, man, God got a plan for you, my brother. God got a
exactly.
plan.
Yes, sir.
Well, Reach recipients, Calvin here attends the Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's a member of their baseball team. He is an outfielder, left and right specifically. So I have to ask, and let me go ahead because I know how the HBCs are. Calvin, go ahead and talk about Morehouse and why they're the best, and kind of for people that don't know about Morehouse.
Well, yes, like JD said, I am a member of Morehouse College. We were founded in 1867, and we are a all male school located in Atlanta, Georgia, and we take a lot of pride on being in our school. To be completely honest, me. I'd say I'm more laid back on the chill end, but I'm definitely, still so proud to be part of, an amazing institution that is, brought up so many, civil rights icons, athletes, politicians, people that, you just look up to, right? And they've done a lot for our community and for the world. So, I'm very glad to go out and represent that every day. And me, I play baseball there. So, that's really great for me as well, keeping that part of my life going. But, specifically the Morehouse part, I am also legacy, which is a really, really big thing that people talk about. My grandfather graduated class of 71, I believe. The Reverend Dr. Calvin Otis Butts III, esteemed civil rights activist and pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church for over 50 years. Great influence in my life. He introduced me to Morehouse because, people was like, oh, your grandfather went to Morehouse. I was like, oh, what's Morehouse? And, I learned so much from him and, the way he carried himself. He was a true Morehouse man. So that's just a little bit about me and how, I learned about Morehouse. I'm there now, still learning, going into my sophomore year. So very excited for what the future lies in Atlanta. Yeah.
Hey, Atlanta. That's all you can say. You can say, hey, now I'll do y'all homework on Morehouse College now. They down there different. They produce great men out there. Come on now. So put some respect on it. Put some respect. Regis recipients, Calvin here, even though he goes to Morehouse College, he is from the great state of New York, born and raised in Harlem, New York.
Yeah.
So, Calvin, I have to ask you, and you can continue to brag. Talk to me about growing up in the environment of Harlem. As some people may know, New York has different boroughs, and every borough is a different city, different vibe. So, for you personally, how was it growing up, being born and raised in Harlem?
Well, I think it's a privilege to be raised in the greatest city of all time in the world. So many opportunities here. Then when you talk about Harlem specifically, I think it's the epicenter, kind of the beacon of Black culture, especially in New York City, but definitely in the United States, I might argue. We always have we have ways of expressing ourselves, and we've started culture. We've been extremely popular in pop culture. Our lingo is used all the time. You see it on TikTok, Instagram, my heart, all kinds of things, I could go on and on, but our influence is so, it's spread worldwide. And so when you come here, you feel that love and that energy, from the people you interact with. You see people sitting on their steps, just chilling, playing music outside, and you got kids getting ices, coming back from the sprinkler that's playing at the park, just chill vibes, and so that's the kind of love and energy that's spread around here, I think. And, that's the kind of love and energy that I bring everywhere that I go because I was raised here. So I think Harlem, one of the greatest places on earth. And it represents New York City, which is all about culture, and it's a melting pot, which is definitely true. You have all kinds of people coming here to New York City and Harlem now. So grateful to be from the city.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, building off that question, you and I both know that Harlem is a very culturally diverse area. A lot of sports are being played there. Specifically, though, people are known for New York to be a basketball state, hooping state. So, for you personally, whom or what kind of pulled you into baseball and to steer into a different direction than the norm of basketball in Harlem or New York?
Right. So I would say I got to shout out Harlem Little League for sure.
Mhm.
Local Little League, they really put me into the environment of baseball and showed me how much I loved it, really.
Mhm.
Growing up as a kid in my house, I always loved sports, straight up. Like, I always watched football with my parents. My mom, she's from Pittsburgh. She's a huge Steelers fan. We will always watch the games when I was little. I would get super passionate. I start crying, all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so as I got older, though, I was realizing there were more sports. My dad, he's also from New York. He loves the Knicks. He will watch them when 2012, 2011, 20. That Linsanity run.
Mhm.
I got introduced to the Knicks around then, right? So those little moments, I really enjoyed that. Actually playing the sport of baseball in Harlem Little League. I started around age 4 or 5,
Mhm.
and I kind of just fell in love with the game. At first it was just the initial hitting the baseball, right, and then getting a run around the bases. You kind of get exhilarated. That feeling of hitting the baseball, and then you realize you got to run around, or else you know it really don't mean anything. It's like I fell in love with that aspect.
Okay.
If it like hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do in the world, right? Especially in sports. And so for me, like being good at it initially, just having talent, especially in my younger age, like made me fall in love with that. And then, the fielding came and the other things came as I continued to play the sport, right? But like just initially, just being out there and stepping to the plate and having an opportunity to hit the ball was really, really enticing to me. And then as I grew up, I learned more things about the game, defense, more IQ stuff, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
right? And that made me fall in love with the game even more because I realized you can't just hit the ball, right? Or just field the ball, throw it to first. You can't, like, it takes more than talent to be good at baseball. There are a lot of different puzzle pieces that go into the full picture, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so as you get older and continue to play the game, you learn more about the game every time you play it. Like even now, as as a college baseball player, I'm learning every single day I step onto the field because there's honestly a lot that I still don't know, even though I'm at this level. So I think that's what made me fall in love with it initially, and then that's what keeps me in love with the game is that there's still so much more to learn, even as you continue to build your resume in terms of your learning of the game. So I'd say that's what kind of drew me into the game. That's what draws people into any sport really. But for me, I think baseball, it takes a lot of thinking and a lot of understanding to be good at it. So
Hmm. So when you were growing up playing baseball, did you give any other sports any tries? Like, did you try basketball or football? And if so, was it just kind of the love that overtook baseball that you pushed those away?
I definitely gave all three a try. I played football the shortest amount. I played when I was like 6. And I really did. It was okay. I didn't really like it. I remember I got hit really hard one time and I fell on the ground and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Basketball, I played for a long time. I always loved basketball. I still love basketball. Um, I remember learning really how to play through 2K. I can't lie. I
Yeah,
used to play
that's
2K all
that's
the time, right? And I used to be like, oh, let me see if I could try that on the actual court.
good.
And that's how I like learned. I just picked up a basketball and started playing. And, I always loved that. I played in high school, I was on varsity my sophomore year. I didn't play. And then junior and senior year eventually led up to captain in my senior year, which was really great. Um, but I was good at basketball because I was athletic, but I was never really, you know, one of those guys.
Like what? Okay, okay. I that,
I was that, I was serviceable. I think I was pretty good. Always gave hustle, heart, and I understood the game of basketball like I do baseball.
Mhm.
But for baseball, man, I was just different. Like I remember just every time I would play baseball, like it's different feeling going out there and catching the ball, hitting a baseball, running around. Like when you hit a baseball hard, like it feels effortless. Like and that feel like I said, that feeling, like every time I do it, like it just feels right every time. And I knew I like would be critical of myself and think, okay, like should I go the basketball route? Because basketball and baseball were definitely my best sports, but
Mhm.
baseball always was the number one. I feel like
Mhm.
there was never a doubt in my mind like I was not going to play baseball.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So, was there carrying off that? Was there a specific moment or a game situation where you kind of realized that you wanted to take baseball seriously and to the next level?
That's a good question. I don't I don't really think so, but if I had to give you like yeah, okay, I can give you a moment. I would
Mhm.
say my sophomore year season
Okay.
of high school. So freshman year was COVID. We didn't really play much, but I got my playing time because I was one of the best kids out there, to be quite frank.
Okay. Talk that talk.
Um, but we didn't really play much, so I got my opportunity here and there, but we only played like 3 games. Sophomore year though, I
Mhm.
got a chance to just play full season, and I did great. And I think that moment really was big for me because it raised my confidence level to a point where it's like, okay, I know I can go out there and compete because I have other people, my competitors, coaches on my team, on other teams telling me you have the potential to be something great. And when you hear that from other people, it makes you want to invest in yourself, put more time in so that you can reach those goals and then surpass what people thought you could already do, build on that potential. And, I'm still trying to do that.
Mhm.
But, that also entices me as well when people say, you think, we see some potential in you and, you've produced greatly so far. And so that was big for me. And I'd say, but that year, that was a really good year for me. And then junior and senior year, I kind of, kept playing and built my playing up to a level where I could, play at Morehouse and, I'm getting my opportunities there as well. So
Hmm. So, walk me through kind of the positioning when you were playing baseball. What position did you start out as, or kind of what was your favorite position, and how did you end up at outfield and left and right?
got you. So funny. I used to play everywhere.
Mhm.
I used to be what they called a utility player.
Mhm.
Infield, outfield. The only position that I would never ever play is catcher. I have a huge respect for catchers.
Respect.
Catchers do so much. They are they do more than the pitcher. The pitcher is, of course, they throw balls and strikes, but the catcher, they got to crouch down, they got to get down in the dirt, block balls, they got to do all kinds of stuff in that gear, and when it's hot, it's rough. So I was never a catcher, but everywhere else I thought I was great at.
Mhm.
And I proved it too. All the way up until I was around 14, 15 is when I focused mainly on outfield because the thing about being an infielder is, especially a middle infielder, is that you have to be quick on your feet and you got to be normally middle infielders are shorter.
Mhm.
They can move faster. They just have less body, right? And with people with longer legs, you don't see them typically play a shortstop or a second base or a third base really,
Mhm.
They'll play maybe first base cuz they don't necessarily move well. So, at a certain point I was like, okay, I don't want to be an infielder at all. And I had been practicing outfield cuz I had played outfield on my travel teams from ages 11 or 12 up until now, right? And I fell in love with that. I played center field and I loved catching fly balls, just throwing people out, just letting it loose, right? That part was great too, making diving catches, things like that, and especially when people like Aaron Judge came out, I already knew about players like Ken Griffey, you know just to name one person. But you know people like that made me want to be an outfielder. They're amazing infielder, amazing players all around baseball. But I don't know, that outfield thing, it stuck with me. And so as I continue to, specialize on it, think about it, how can I be the best outfielder that I can be? And as I continue to, refine my game and be the best player that I could be, I was like, yeah, let me focus on this outfield thing. And
Mhm.
so that's what I did, and that's where I am now. So
Right.
yeah,
It's been a journey. It's been a journey. Amen. Amen. So
exactly.
I know you mentioned that going to Morehouse, it was part of the legacy, kind of destined in your DNA. But for you personally, outside of the legacy, what drew you to Morehouse and to join the baseball team and join the brotherhood?
Yeah. So I think it's exactly what you just said. The
Mhm.
brotherhood aspect is a huge thing at Morehouse. And then on the baseball team specifically, it's also a huge thing. Coach Grissom, who has been great, in his tenure there. We've seen improved seasons since he's been there. He not relies on it, but his roster shows you how much of a brotherhood that we have.
Mhm.
There are a bunch of you don't normally see a team full of just black baseball players.
That's true.
Like you don't see that anywhere, not in college sports, not in major league sports, not in any professional sport. You don't really see that. So him having a carrying a bigger roster on a college at a college level, I think show is a big, it's a big indicator and a big signal that, we're building something
Mhm.
really, really important, especially, showing other young black boys that, we can play baseball at a high level, compete and have fun doing it. Like all of us together. We always our home games are always popping. Like when we win in games and we hitting the ball like we always do on
Mhm.
our ballpark, it's a fun time, right? And I realized that this freshman year, we always have a lot of fun, right? And so, that brotherhood aspect, just learning from each other, growing, pushing each other also, in practice, times get tough. We don't necessarily want to, maybe do running, all these drills, right? It gets tough sometimes, but we rely on each other to, push through. And I think that's really important, especially on a sports team. So um that's what drew me to Morehouse, honestly, from an academic and social perspective as well as an athletic perspective.
Right.
You know, getting, having people that will, have your back and also push you at the same time.
Mhm.
And just in your life in general is something good to have, and Morehouse offers that, and I'm grateful to have that community, that network, um to build off of. So yeah.
That's true. I respect that about Morehouse. The community and brotherhood is something that's unique and stands out. So, Morehouse being in Atlanta and you being from Harlem, they're very two completely different places, but still rather lit, fun cities, as we
Of
would
course.
say. So, for you personally, what was the biggest culture shock or biggest shock for you, an adjustment from moving from Harlem to down in the South, the soul, Atlanta, Georgia?
Well, I mean, it's still black people, so that was cool. That was a little seamless, you know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
I would say for me personally, I'm a big public transit guy.
Mhm.
So they that don't it's not really the same in Atlanta,
Yeah,
right? So a lot of Ubers, you gotta have your whip. If you don't got your whip, then it's Ubers, right? But in terms of like actual culture shock, eh, I wouldn't say I had a huge one because
it is. Mhm.
it's not like it's Atlanta's still a city, right? And so New York and Atlanta, having that city vibe, you know, I'm familiar with it, and it's not like I was never in a suburb at any point in my life. Like I feel like people who might come from the suburbs might come to Atlanta and might like have a bit of a culture shock, right? But I feel like being from a metro city, like even if you're from like a Dallas or something like that, or like places that are considered big cities like Chicago, right?
Mhm.
DC, right? Like these are metro cities that, we have similarities, right? And so honestly, it wasn't the biggest culture shock for me, but like, it's still maybe the culture shock still hasn't come yet. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe maybe it's in my future somewhere and I'm just like not in that place yet. So, we'll see. But
That's probably in the works. In the works.
right, maybe. But overall, I think the culture it's been a pretty good balance. Obviously there's a difference. There's a different vibe when I go to school versus when I come home, but I ain't been much of a change for me, honestly.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
speaking on that adjustment part, You just spoke on the culture aspect, but how was the adjustment part from playing baseball in Harlem and New York to now playing baseball on the collegiate level down in the South in Atlanta?
Yeah, so I will say that every day at practice, and I understood this from jump because keep such a big team. The competition within like ourselves is fierce because there are only a couple spots, right?
Mhm.
So like here in Harlem, like I was always one of the best. Like I knew that because of my talent, my work ethic. I was always willing to put in the extra work to be one of the better players, right? And the coaches respected that. The other players around me respected that, right? And so
Mhm.
that's where I got to where I was in high school and so on and so forth. But when you get to college, when you get to the collegiate level, you have to understand that everyone that is coming there was the best in their respective high school community, whatever, right? So everyone's basically on the same playing field.
Mhm.
And you got to go out there and prove yourself every single day. And if you don't do that, you will get put on the side, right? And you might still get your opportunities here and there, but they will come less and less if you don't put the work in. So I had to, set some stuff aside, honestly, this freshman year and just put more work in than I maybe usually would. And, I had some early mornings, some late nights, but that's what I understood is that sometimes you just got to give stuff up. You got to
Mhm.
sacrifice in order to get to where you want to be. And I'm definitely still working on that. There are still some sacrifices that I need to make in order to get to where I need to be because I'm not finished yet. There is no job that's been finished by me, especially, because I'm still a work in progress. Right. But, understanding that you got to make sacrifices sometimes is super important, especially at the collegiate level, because you got to make time for what's important your work. In my case, if you're an athlete, your sport, and you can make time for your social life and all that and your mental health too, because that's obviously super important, right? You got to make time for all of those things. But understanding that sacrifice is important towards making those choices. If you can understand that, then I think you're on the right track. And that's something that I've had to understand is that I've had to make more sacrifices so far in my collegiate career that I didn't necessarily have to make when I was playing here back home. And that's, just part of growing up, I think. So, yeah.
I respect for that. I respect you not only for acknowledging the issue, but also acknowledging it so early. Like you just finished your freshman year, so a lot of people usually don't figure this out later until later in their lives. But you've already figured it out up front and are working on
Right.
the issue. So that's respect. So you just finished your freshman year at Morehouse, and was there ever walk me through? Was there ever a certain time, maybe a practice, game, or moment where you're kind of going through it mentally? And if so, how were you able to get through it?
I would say, interesting. I would say there was a moment where I wasn't sure whether the work that I was putting in was being noticed.
Hmm.
And I'd say, I don't want to speak for my other fellow teammates, but I feel like a lot of them shared the same sentiment where I feel like we were putting in the work and it wasn't necessarily being noticed by a coach. That can mess with a player sometimes mentally just because, you feel like you're putting your all into something and, nobody's batting an eye. And so, when you go to practice, 5 days a week, it's taking a toll on your body, right? You got less time maybe to sleep because you got to go to the library, you got to stay up late in your room doing homework, right? For a class that you might not necessarily like. And then you got to wake up maybe for your class that you like even less at 8 a.m. in the morning the next morning, right? And you got practice, and that cycle kind of goes on for a while. And then, you get to practice, you putting in this work, and it's not necessarily being noticed. It's not necessarily because coach doesn't like you. Like that's not the case. It's
Hmm.
just, we have other players at that position that are producing. Like they're getting us where we need to be. That we're winning with them in the lineup over you right now.
Hmm.
And like you got to show me something even more to show me that you're better than this person because right now I'm going to go with him. That's just how it is. That's the honest truth in sports. And so sometimes hearing that truth can be a little rough mentally. But I would say for me personally, that there was a little rough patch, towards I'd say before the first semester ended because, we work in the first semester to get prepared for the season, which starts as soon as second semester starts. Like
Mhm.
as soon as Christmas break is over, like we're going, like it's time, right? So the fall semester is spent mentally and physically preparing. So with that, you kind of get some decisions that need to be made, and that can take a toll on you when you don't hear what you want to.
Mhm.
But for me, it's important to just keep pushing, because at some point someone will notice you. Someone is always watching. That's something I learned as well. Like
Mhm.
someone is always watching you, especially when you're on the field. Like at some point, someone's batting an eye. Whether it's one person, two, three, at some point someone is watching you. So you always got to stay alert, stay 10 toes down, and keep putting in the work, because if you stop putting in the work, there's no way that anyone will, bat an eye towards you. If you, just kind of decrease your light in the situation, make yourself less vocal, then
Mhm.
like there's no way that anyone will notice you. But if you keep putting in the work consistently, you got to believe that at some point it's gonna work for you. Like something's gonna break through for you. You're gonna get your moment, and when you do get your moment, you got to capitalize.
Mhm. It's all
Yeah,
about execution. All about execution. So I know we've talked about it briefly. We talked about the community and the brotherhood at Morehouse. So walk me through and talk me through during those times where you may be questioning yourself. How does not only does the brotherhood community of the baseball team show up for you, but the brotherhood and community of Morehouse College? How does that support and show up for you during those times?
yeah. So I would say, since the baseball team, you spend so much time with them. With any athletic team, you spend a lot of time with them. So, you end up in your side talks. You waiting to start a drill. You talking to your homeboy who you might have a class with.
Mhm.
Like, yo, did you do that homework? Like, or you preparing for that test, or blah 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 blah, whatever. Or that professor, like, I'm not rocking with them. Like they came up with some crazy, like something crazy, and I'm not trying to hear all that, right?
Mhm.
You have those little conversations with those people, and you build your friendships off that. You learn more about them. I mean, you talk about your classes. So if you have any questions about that, that community's there. And then I would say, like, in general, because we all understand, the students at Morehouse, I feel like we all understand that we're there for each other, and we don't all necessarily have the answers. There are not necessarily a million, but a lot of resources that are available. If we have questions really about anything about our mental health, there's an entire mental resource for if
Yeah.
you need mental health help, right? There's a writing center for if you need to get some help on that essay, right? Same thing for math and all these other different subjects, right? An academic center, basically,
Mhm.
right? All these different resources that are there, but then when it comes down to like that advice you just need to hear from like one of your friends,
Mhm.
like everyone at Morehouse, I feel like is friendly and can help you answer your question. If they don't, or like give you some advice about what to do, because I feel like something else I've learned is talking to people. When you talk to people, you learn that everyone has unique, some people have unique experiences, but you think you've had a unique experience until you talk to someone, like, and you realize, oh, this human has been through some of the same stuff that I've been through. Like, let me ask him a question about like something maybe only I've thought of, right?
Mhm.
Like my homies from high school, they never went through anything like this, right? But I just talked to this person, I was sitting next to him during lunch, I have nowhere else to sit. I'm sitting here by myself, right? He asked me to pass the salt. Next thing you know, we talking about, I don't know, right? But we're like networking, honestly. And
Exactly.
so I think everyone at Morehouse is willing to network, and be there for each other, and just try and provide an answer, because I feel like that's something we're all constantly looking for, is an answer to something,
That's true.
right? And so I feel like we're always willing to help. I think that's super important, and that's something I've seen, is that Morehouse brothers are always willing to help, especially on campus, right? And especially if people in my dorm, that's a huge one for sure.
Mhm.
Like that community, for me, being in Graves during my freshman year, that's a huge network of people that I know now, that they're going to go off and do amazing things, and I've connected with them, and I'm friends with all those people, right? So the people that you live with, if you even if you go off campus, like, where did you meet those people? On
Mhm.
campus, right? So like 9 times out of 10, it's just going to be the people on campus that you see every day and your everyday friends, and even if it's not those people, even if you just cold approach someone, I think they'll be willing to help you and hear you out, answer your question, and try and point you in the right direction. That's what I appreciate about the community.
I feel like that's instilled in a lot of people in Morehouse, just the gratitude and the genuine connection. You kind of come up to anyone, have a good conversation. I noticed that early in high school when I visited. So
Mhm.
speaking of the term networking, you and I both know you're a journalism major. I'm a journalism major. Morehouse is not an easy school, rather a very academic, rigorous school. They demand a lot day in and day out. But on top of that, you're a collegiate athlete.
Yep.
So how do you balance both being on the baseball team and being at a rigorous school studying journalism?
It's hard. Like it's hard. I can't lie. It's
That's
hard.
real though. That's real.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna front. It's hard. Like there's no need to lie about it. I'm
Mhm.
still trying to figure it out, right? Because this freshman year for me, honestly, it wasn't too hard academically, but I don't want to. I want to preface it by saying that it is going to get hard. Like this sophomore year, it is going to get rough, right? And so the answer to your question is I'm I'm still trying to figure it out, right? Because I will really be able to answer your question in like 6 months. But right now, for this freshman year, I would say communicate. Communication is so big between your coach, between you and your professors,
Mhm.
and like between I don't know people in your class, because like I said, they can help you, right? So being an athlete, that means sometimes you're gonna miss a class. Sometimes if you're on the road
Mhm.
with the team, you play in a weekend series, and maybe you're gonna miss Friday's classes, right? Or maybe you got a middle of the day game on Tuesday and you're going to miss those classes, right? So it's important to communicate with your professors to keep up. First, let them know that you're not going to be there.
Mhm.
Two, find out what's going on in class. That's super important because when you do that, you can honestly do the work on your own. A lot of the work in college in general is, you got to do it yourself, right? There's not really anybody telling you to do it. Like if you don't submit it, like there's not going to be an email home or anything like that. Like there's just going to be a zero, right? So, like priding yourself on, just taking the time to do it is important. But like I said, communicating and learning what you need to do first is good. And, you know, like I said, if you got a question, you can text somebody in your class. If your class has a group chat, most of
Mhm.
my classes always got group chats. Like when we
What's
start, we like,
necessary?
look, we
Necessary.
gotta look, we gotta go group me link, like everybody scan the barcode, we gonna be in that. If we got any questions or complaints about the professor, like let's just type it in, right? Those little communities are always very good, especially for athletes, because usually my Morehouse brothers, they be looking out for me. Like they looked out for me like when I was missing class sometimes, right? And they would provide me with some notes and I'll be caught up. I'll be all good. That's super important. Um, and then I would say, like I said, just trying not to procrastinate and making time to like just do work. Like
Mhm.
being an athlete means you're gonna be in class all the way up to when you have practice. Some days you might have to miss practice because you have class. Yeah. And that's when it gets really rough because you start talking about, getting enough playing time, but sometimes I'm not at practice. Why? Because I gotta keep my GPA up.
So that you can keep playing.
It's a dual it's really a lot of things you gotta like think about, right? So, um it's an interesting dynamic, honestly, because it really tests your time management and then again your mental because you got to worry about getting the best grade and you tired from practice and you still want to go out. Like it's crazy.
You got to balance it out for real.
Yeah, you got to balance it out. So it's still a challenge and I'm definitely going to deal with it this year, but I'm it's an exciting challenge. It's an
Yeah,
exciting challenge.
yeah. Looks like you got it head on a swivel. Like you got it good. I have no worries. So Calvin, what would be some advice that you would give to young athletes back in New York that dream of playing college baseball?
I would say keep playing baseball.
Mhm.
That's the most important part. I think it's funny and interesting that you mentioned, playing basketball, especially in New York,
Mhm.
because that's usually what happens. Kids are like, there are no real opportunities, which is kind of fair. New York, I feel like, lacks like real opportunities for kids to, go on and pursue. But I think it's super important to, just keep finding ways to play baseball, because if you get disengaged from the sport, I don't think there's any way that you can, one, continue to learn about the sport and learn about yourself within the sport. Like, learn your skill set, see other players, see where you match up. It's important to see that, especially if you're considering playing college baseball. So put yourselves in, if you're a baseball player or in any real situation, if you want to play in college, put yourselves in positions and in places where there are athletes better than you, players better than you, because you're going to learn from them, right? If you get your ass kicked in a drill or something like that, right? Like, that's important. Like, if you're last in a drill, and you think you're running your hardest, and you come like sixth or seventh or eighth, or like, you in the back end of the group, right? Like, it's important to learn from that, because you're like, okay, I got to get to the front. Like, what is it going to take for me to get to the front? And when you put in that work in, that's when someone's going to notice you and be like, oh, okay, this kid got some potential. Like, let's just talk about like me, you coming to play for my school. Like, that's when offers happen. Like, you know, I feel like I went to, different showcases and different opportunities to just play. People saw my drive, right? And they were like, okay, this kid might not be the best person I've seen on the field, but like, he showed heart. He got a good swing. Like, he has good intangibles, and I see a lot of potential. Like, let's just talk to him. Let's see him. Let's put him in this space and see how he does, right? So as long as you keep putting yourselves in rooms where there's competition, I think you have a good chance of playing in college, because you got to always compete. It's all about competition, honestly.
It's a dog eat dog's world. Got to get to the top. So, Calvin, you just finished your freshman year at Morehouse College.
Yep.
Now, you and I both know, I know that you're a great journalist as well, and you're pursuing that journalism degree as well. For you personally, if you've given any thought, do you want to go the MLB route and take baseball, post college, or do you want to go with that Morehouse pedigree and degree and continue with the journalism career that I know you're also going to do great in as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and I've thought about it very, very briefly, and I have to see how this upcoming season goes for me, because that could make a lot of decisions depending on how I treat my baseball career the rest of my time. But I definitely want to graduate from Morehouse. I would say, I think that degree carries a lot of weight,
It does.
and so I still have so much to learn, right, and still so much to experience. But right now, I'm saying I'd like to graduate from Morehouse, and continue to grow there. And in terms of MLB, I don't want to speak on that right now, for me personally. But I would say, like, in terms of post graduation, like, I just love to work in the world of sports, whether it be as a journalist, because I'm still learning things about the journalism world as well. The whole Ed Bradley experience for me, like, just opened my eyes in terms of just being in a newsroom in general. Like, what does that actually look like, right? What kind of work does it take to be a good top of the line journalist? So that goes into my thought process now as well, because that experience was super meaningful. So right now, I'm saying I want to be in the world of sports. That has been my upbringing, basically. It's been part of my life, my identity, and so I want to keep doing that, because that's what I love. I want people to just go out there and do what they love,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? So right now, that's what I want to say. But the future is the future, man. Anything is possible. So
I got you. He got a plan for you. He got
yeah,
a plan
yeah,
for you.
exactly,
I,
exactly.
I
So
wouldn't hate to see you in the sports journalism world with me, brother. I wouldn't hate that. Somebody got to be producing the sports and talk to the athletes.
we gonna see.
I'll
We
see
gonna
it.
see.
'Cause I'll
Yes,
make it.
sir.
Now, before we end things up, Calvin, I have one and final question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the listeners and viewers on their mental health journey?
I would say, hmm, it's a really good one, because I'm still working on mine. I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I think something that people want to do is stay in their comfort zone. and that's justified. I feel like that can be okay, but I think it's also important to go into new experiences, feel different things, express yourselves sometimes differently to in order to I don't know, maybe change for the better. It's an experience that I think experiences and learning is, like I said, always happening in every aspect. So in terms of working on your mental health, always try and keep a positive mindset. I know it feels very like, I don't know, like, it's all objective, but just trying to stay positive and thanking God that you wake up every day. That's what I start. That's definitely what I start with. Just being glad that I wake up every day and I feel good and I'm able to stand on my 2 feet. That does a lot. Even though we all got a lot going on. Everyone has a lot going on, especially now in this time and age. But just thanking God that you can get up, walk around, make it to the next day. Every day I wake up, I think of what is it? Can you give me one more day?
One more day.
Is Unc. Can you give me one more? I'm not asking for a week. I'm not. Yeah, he just can you give me one more day,
Well,
right? Like that's what you got to think about. Like, can you
yeah.
just give me one more day? See how the day goes, and can you give me one more? So just glad that I wake up every morning. Try and keep a positive mindset. That's what I would say,
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Calvin. I really do appreciate you for
brother
coming
John
on the
David. I
podcast,
appreciate you.
man, dropping this gem, telling your story. We're going to wish you a great season. We want to pray for you, not only academic, but athletic season. We'll be watching over you as well as you do well in the best state in the world, Atlanta, Georgia. Any last
I don't
words,
know.
Calvin? Any last words?
Nah, man, I'm just grateful to you, my boy JD. You keep doing your thing. I'm so glad that we got to do this. We met in general. This networking thing is a beautiful thing. So we gonna keep doing it, and I hope we end up in the same spaces. Going forward. You know what I'm saying? So all the best to you in your school year.
Mhm.
We gonna cross paths. We gonna keep in touch. Chop it up once more. So I appreciate you, my boy, for real.
No, I know God's gonna put us again together again soon. That brotherhood, that brotherhood.
Yes,
So I
sir.
appreciate you again. And recipients, remember, it's okay if you're not okay. And I'm out.